Hey everyone, this is Matt Yeti from Data Center Therapy, reminding you to be sure to listen to the very end of the podcast, where we'll be letting you know how to enter to win a free Yeti cooler. That's right, a free Yeti cooler, courtesy of our friends at Proofpoint. Yeti, not Matt Yeti, but you get it. It's cool, it's a cooler, and it's going to be free. So keep your ears peeled and find out how to enter later on in the episode.
You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Data Center Therapy. I'm your host, Matt Yeti. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Matt Cozzolino. Matt, how goes it?
It goes wonderfully. I got me some coffee. Nice
Yes.
sunny day. Yeah.
Yes, very nice. Yeah, it's sunny here as well, and I'm actually a couple hours ahead of you right now. So
Actually,
I'm
a couple, just two.
still the morning, just
Okay.
two,
Okay.
an actual couple, a true couple. But we are joined by a very special guest today. First time on the pod. We alluded to this, I believe. Was it our last episode, Kaz, or the one before last, or
Oh, it was a couple ago.
something? Yeah.
Yeah. Two or three.
When we dove deep into email security, and not quite so deep, but the importance of it, we're joined by Darla Teeter, who's a channel SE for Proofpoint. Now, channel SE means normally us, Kaz and I, and our colleagues are privy to her knowledge, but we're sharing her with everybody now today. So you all get to really dive into the people who teach the people who are talking to you about Proofpoint, how things work. So Darla, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you here. It's really good to have you here. Now,
Welcome.
you've been super generous with your time and your knowledge in kind of, I know me personally, I can't speak for anybody else in the team so far, but kind of ramping up this relationship between Ivoxy and Proofpoint in that, email security, I think you ask anybody on the street email security and they probably have an idea of what that is, but you've done a great job of opening my eyes to just how wide that scope of protection can be. So you want to just give a high-level intro, first of all, to what your approach is, why you think it's important, why you think email security is important, and fill in the blanks, if you would. If I gave you a couple of minutes to talk, what would you say?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. I'm
What
so
would you
happy
say
to
you
be
do
here.
Yeah.
What would you say you do here?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am a channel SE, a systems engineer, sales engineer, whatever, the titles change a lot. But I work with our partners and instruct them on how to understand our positions and what all we do with our solutions. And really the number one threat and where Proofpoint started was email security, making sure that data that's coming through a gateway, whether that's spam, whether that's, whatever it is, bulk mail, spam, imposter data, whatever it is, that we could go in and stop that based on a variety of things, such as scores, reputation. The list really just goes on and on. And so that was the bread and butter for many years. But as time goes on, or has gone on, realize it's not just the old style of protecting environments and that number one threat vector, which is email, but there's a fundamental change in how attackers actually go after their targets. In the old days, and this really actually still happens, we see this quite a bit, where customers are still thinking along the traditional lines of protecting their environment with perimeter security and firewalls and a gateway, possibly, but they're not thinking through a variety of other channels that attackers can access their users. A lot of that has changed, especially with remote workforces after 2020 began, where people were working from home, needing to protect users no matter where they are.
And what does that border look like when 75% of your workforce is out of the office?
Yeah, absolutely a great question. So, with a traditional, they'd be in the office behind the security perimeter, but now with a variety of areas that or places that they're working, we see that attackers are going after them through social engineering, looking at LinkedIn, looking at Twitter, looking at a variety of channels that they can get in, out on websites, sending email through, but it can be non-traditional channels that we wouldn't even, or companies wouldn't really think about as their workforce has expanded and working from home or other areas. And
Do you,
so, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
do you find that most of the attack vector is that social engineering piece? It's not like, here, let me just spam you a bunch of files anymore and hope something gets clicked. It's more targeted and looking for a specific person or a specific someone to compromise?
Yeah, that's a great question. We see a mix, actually. You still have your traditional spammers. You have people trying to get through with like it's not as
Brute force or
targeted.
something.
Yeah, it's not as targeted necessarily. You just have people sending out loads of spam trying to get through. But then you also have highly targeted actors out there who could be even up to the level of like a nation state targeting someone who's very specific, who has a lot of access, knowledge, privileges on a network. And back to the whole idea of the way to protect through security and people-centric is this modern view of an attack. Really, you have to think about it as your people are your new perimeter. That's how attackers now see people as their target of choice. So really need to, think through that and think about how do we protect those users.
Well, one thing I talk when I speak about the idea of how important is X, anything we do, and I like to think at Ivoxy, any kind of solution we recommend, it's not frivolous, it's not nice to have. There's ultimately an underlying need and a level of quality to the solution and the products that those solutions include. But one thing I like to say, and I put it this way, if you could wave a magic wand and say, you know what, email-borne threats are no longer a problem. Like you could say, my email is 100% secure, people can't hack me through it, people can't social engineer my people through it. Global fraud would drop precipitously. Like what, 75%? It's a massive amount of money and pain caused by email-borne threats. So if you could spend $1 on security, I might spend it on email before I'm spending it on a firewall. It's to the point where it is such a ubiquitous attack vector that you have to make any kind of efforts. I think any effort to secure that is super worthy.
If you're not paying attention to email, you're missing a big chunk of it then.
Right.
That's exactly right. Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because we still have customers and organizations out there, whether they're our customers or not, are looking at in general ways to protect, and they're still spending the highest amount on network security, followed by maybe web security and things. But the thing that gets the least amount of money is email. And when we look at the different types of attacks through, like you mentioned, fraud, business email compromise, the list really goes on and on. Those can be highly targeted, where they're going after money, they're going after even your whole, not personality, but basically your account, mimicking and impersonating you, right? Your profile, in a way that not only looks like an imposter, that they're able to get through, but actually taking on the persona of you. And that can do just a huge amount of damage, not only monetarily, but legally. The list really goes on and on. So you're exactly right. Email is a huge component of this. And it's really not getting the amount of coverage in budgets that it should.
So from an email security standpoint, again, like the aforementioned, people have their own ideas. I rolled my own little spam assassin filter, like, heuristics or real-time blacklists or, stuff like that. Proofpoint seems to take it quite a bit further with a more intelligent approach to trying to filter that out, especially people-centric approach, which is interesting because a lot of times we see this at Ivoxy. We've had our finance people, our owners, our managers targeted specifically. When we have a new employee, they're instantly attacked. How, they're getting somehow those details. Oh, they now work for Ivoxy. Maybe they haven't been set up properly. We're going to go after them right away. How do you defend against that targeted kind of approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Proofpoint is in just a huge number of organizations. And I mention this because of the scope of data that we see, whether that's in our customers, whether we're in, in providers' environments, capturing just millions of data points. We're able to see where that information is, and we go through and we correlate that. And based on our gateway alone, we're stopping upwards of 75, 80, 85% of the information that's coming through by reputation alone. So things that might get through a filter that the provider can't see the amount of data that we can, along with our threat analysts and all the different sandboxing and the tools on the back end that we're looking at, we're able to provide so much rich data that we can see that information and even stop it before it comes in. And then as that goes through the system, if it does happen to go through, then there's all sorts of protection that we're looking at, from machine learning and AI, as well as threat analysts on the back end, looking at data, putting it through sandboxing, static, as well as more dynamic based on things that we already know, threats versus ones that we don't, and we can go through and explore those, see what happens with them, without even letting them, without a user being able to access that data. So we can lock that down. But in the event that something did get through, because no one's 100%, just can't find, there's no way to be that way. Attackers know how to put a timer or something, where it will deliver and then change. Then we have abilities to go in and post facto bring that data out and remediate that. And so we're really thinking about this from the email side of it. How do we make sure that users are protected? We also can go in and work based on what we like to call very attacked people, who are called that because of some type of target on their back, whether that's because they're vulnerable, I should say. They click on malicious content. They go through and they fail security awareness training. They have devices that are not configured properly, or they're using cloud services, so they're vulnerable, or they're targeted by threats and they're attacked often because they're someone who would have very sensitive material. They're highly targeted. And then also privileged people who have access or manage critical systems. Then we have a way to not only see all the attacks that are going through, but also track those users who are in that very attacked people category based on vulnerability, attack, and privilege. And we can protect them even more if an organization would like that. For instance, someone who is getting attacked more often, or they're highly targeted, we can go in and beyond what we already do in encompassing protection, we can additionally protect them by locking down every click that they would use to, let's say, go out to a website that would keep them from downloading data into the environment or setting something off.
I love that. Could you dive into what that looks like a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, we started with some email stuff, but it sounds like, is there an agent or something that you can handle that with?
In terms of that, no, that's actually taking our data from our gateway and putting that through what we call our targeted attack protection system, where we're able to go in and look at all the attachments and URLs within the email chain, and those files that have those in those, or those websites, and lock that down. And that's called our browser isolation. So that actually,
this is one of my favorite things, by the way. I'm sorry, but I'm very excited for you to talk about this stuff, because I know I'm leading the question a little bit because I know what this looks like, but I want to hear it from you. I want our listeners to hear it from you, because this is super cool.
Yeah, sure. So this is something that can be set up for really any user in an organization. But the thing we talk about so often is the topic that we're talking about today, people-centric, and working with those very attacked people. They're the ones that are getting targeted the most. And so being able to set policy on the back end to say the emails that are going to this user or have this type of routing on it, or just a whole host of parameters that you can set, let's put that data stream into isolation. So if the user tries to download or click on something, whatever it is that's a threat, we will be able to lock that down where they can't introduce that threat into the network, but they can still get to their data and read it. And so it's really highly effective for keeping those very attacked people from causing even more damage into their environment. That
I just
also,
love
oh,
the
go ahead.
concept, like you asked, Kaz, about the agent. There is no agent because it's all within the web browser.
That's correct. It's all
Okay.
within the web browser. Mhm.
So they
So
click
I
a
mean,
link.
how do you keep it inside of that? How do you
So-
interact with that web browser?
And Darla, fill in. I'm going to answer. I want to answer this excitedly, but Darla, definitely
No, go
jump
ahead.
in and
Yeah,
fill in.
tell us. Go ahead.
So, Kaz, you open an email and you're home. You're not in the office. You're not even on VPN. You're through C65. You click the link. Well, the link, of course, is that modified link because it's come
So
through
you're
proof
doing
points.
you're doing a content rewrite on the email
They
messaging itself.
Exactly.
Correct. They
Okay.
do that. So then you click that, it pops open a new browser window, right? So it's my browser. I can do it. No. The browser window itself opens up a browser within a browser. So Proofpoint service simulates its own web browser. You can see the address.
Like way back
But
in the day when I'd proxy through my own website, I'd have a
Well, think of it like a fancy iframe, right? More or less. But
Yeah,
ultimately, because it is not directly running, the controls can be applied at the top DOM layer to all of that, and basically, you can make rules that say, "Oh, I see a username and password form. Do not allow that user to type in those forms. Period." Because it's running within a browser within your browser, or do not allow them to click and download any files. And you can have that on a per user basis depending on what. So that way, there's no way for that user to really. I mean, I suppose what they could do is they could try to reverse the HTML link, the URL in the email, and pull it out without the Proofpoint gateway stuff, which is it's ugly anyway. So that might not even be all that possible or practical. But if someone does do that, they're very clearly circumventing security, and at that point, that's an actionable thing. You would say, out of that. But ultimately, they click on the link through there, and even if they're determined to give their username and password to that email or to that website, they can't do it. And that's without an agent, without being on your network. That's super impressive to me.
That's exactly the way that works. I really appreciate your detailing that out. It's always good to hear other people, our partners, who know how this works. And just as a side note, if there's someone who is trying to circumvent then the rewriting of that URL, if organizations are using, our insider threat, looking at that, and the DLP based on rules. And there is an agent with the insider threat management component of this, a very small one, that can go in and take a look at every action that a user is taking, even record clips of what's actually happening. And you can trace back every single step that a user is doing. And that's a great way to tie in the threats that we see internally as well in customer base.
I just find that's the common thing. It's when you hear about these attacks, what has happened? A user's phished through email. It's almost exclusively that. That's where it's because it's become
fish somehow, or it's like, here, let me slam a bunch of auths against you, or it's hitting that
the person is the weak point. A lot of
is-
times our technical solutions are great. A lot of them, and it has been solved for the most part, and our users are not, unwillingly or unwittingly determined to.
If we pulled all of the people out of a data center, we wouldn't have any outages anymore.
My network would be perfect if without for the users, but for the users.
That's right. So easy and pristine.
So there's things you're even stretching into the point where you can deal with data loss prevention on top of just the straight up security as well.
Right.
So
I mean, that's awesome.
So from a mail flow, we're sending messages from my organization through your service as well as receiving messages through your service as well. So you see the ingress and egress component piece. Okay.
That's exactly right.
Is-
So go ahead.
Is there anything outside of email that you guys look at, or is it all focused primarily on the email flow?
Yeah, we can. We see email. We branch out into cloud. We look at things such as those cloud accounts that users have, but also third-party
Like for
apps.
SaaS services type thing.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So shadow IT kind of scenarios. We have zero trust availability. We have I mean, beyond email, files, SharePoint, Microsoft, Google. We have a lot of different targets or areas that we're covering. Anywhere from the email security side, DLP, as I mentioned, insider threat, CASB, the web security, even down to like archiving and compliance, digital risk. We're playing in a huge area, and the beauty of this is that all of those tie into
You can
people.
correlate the data across a bunch of different technologies to see what's happening, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Is there something? Is there anything
go ahead,
you can help with for like a customer or user that's got a active threat against them? Is there anything you can do for that? So my website's getting hammered by some other somewhere, right? That kind of a thing, or is that outside of the purview of what you guys work on?
Well, we do have web security tools. I probably need to know a little more about what exactly you're looking for here. We're still an email, cloud-based, that
Okay.
type of security.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
not getting into some of the other perimeters, but glad to talk to you about that more at your leisure.
So I've got a question with regards to the educational piece, and a lot of times with Ivoxy, we are very much focused on the education of it. It is not just here's a solution, there you go, you're all set, right? Because empowering users on how to leverage a solution, a platform, a product, whatever, is super important to us because we want happy customers, we want fantastic relationships going forward, and if a customer feels like they're hung out to dry, or even if the initial ask is satisfied, but then it's just kind of like, well, where were you guys after that? I had a couple questions, but that's not satisfactory to us. But a lot of the, I guess you could take that educational term and concept and turn the direction of it a little bit, not just to like, hey, this is how this works, but how do we keep you apprised? How do we help you help yourself? From an email standpoint, email security standpoint, threats and all of this, it's very easy to be diligent for a month, 6 months, and then I gotta get my work done. I gotta get back to And so how is there some sort of a training or mock attacks that Proofpoint does?
Absolutely. Hey, that's a great segue into our security awareness training, our security education that Proofpoint offers for our customers. And what that looks like is it can be, the type of training that you would typically see in an organization, but we don't like to really push that type. And what I mean by that is those yearly kind of boring 35, 45-minute online training that people get tired and don't really pay attention to. What we're able to do is have training that's highly targeted toward users in an organization based on some parameters that we're able to look at by sending out threats, pretend type of threats that they could or would not fall for, depending on what type of user they are. And so we get an idea of what their baseline is in terms of what they know and what they recognize. And then we go in and we're able, as I mentioned, to target those users with teachable moments. What kinds of threats might they see in an email, in an attachment? They're very real world looking. They're not the typical types that you see with lower level spammers that may be sending something out that doesn't even look right. This looks like the real deal. And what we're able to do is if users are falling for things such as they're a VAP user, they are the ones that click on links a lot. They don't really pay attention to the threats and know what to look for. Then what we can do is as they fall for those, we can automatically enroll them in training and have that training take place right at that time, just within a quick training minute. We can also do more advanced type of training where we might have a program or schedule for them. So there are a variety of ways to do that. And one of the things that I like to mention beyond a traditional scope of user education is that we also have something that allows for users to actually self-report things that they think are targets and then have Proofpoint assess on the back end through our threat research, is that a threat or is it not? And that's based on some automation as well as our threat analyst being able to report back, yes, you successfully identified a threat. No, that's not. Let's put you into training to find out what it is that you need to know. And as a side note, we have quite a few customers who will use this in a sort of game or prize winning
I
situation
love
where the
that.
first person who identifies it gets a gift card or there's some type of reward for identifying that.
Keep up that diligence. I like that.
I
Exactly.
like
Yes.
I like the little bits all the time. That is much more consumable.
Exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
we've all
And
sat through those long uh,
oh,
training sessions. You learn some things, but it's
Embrace the
really
ADHD, right?
yeah,
well,
exactly.
Coslino has seen a lot of videos about harassment, and yet he won't leave me alone. So I don't know if those
It's
things
a rough
stick.
life you live, huh?
Yeah.
We have some teachable moments that we can push out.
Well, I think that's great too because it kind of reminds me of the same thought process behind a proper SIM, like event management
Uh-huh.
and alerting on that. And if that alerting is so loud and constant, I'm eventually going to tune it out. So the quality of that education, the frequency, the diversity of how you train. If it's the same droning thing every month, I know what to ignore. I'm just going to ignore it.
Exactly.
But that variety, and the gamification of it, I really do like that, especially in modern times where you've got a lot of people who grew up playing video games now in control of these policies. It's a really novel approach to making sure people are invested in that. And outside of just, you don't want people to operate scared though either. You click on that link, you're going to lose your job. It's not probably a very effective motivator. It's probably a
Right.
good way to get people just to stop using email. I'm just going to stay away from it.
On that point, do you end up doing like training for the management team to say like, hey, if we're going to do this, it's important for you to embrace the fact that we're doing this training and make it a positive event for people that are getting trained?
Oh,
Is that it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, that's part of the program to make sure that, what are the ways that are positive and that we've seen work and that really strengthen a program. We have all of that information, help build programs out. And that's something our partners can take as well in terms of helping their customers come up with those types of solutions. So we've got it covered in from a proof point perspective, as well as partners being able to provide that service for their customers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, Darla, are you mostly knowledgeable, or I guess the word is, do you do anything with the Essentials product? Are you mostly on the proof point on demand?
I'm basically on the enterprise service
Yep.
side, but we do have essentials, and I do have partners that are using that. Be glad
And we
to.
are one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the products, and we're just we talked about it on a previous podcast, but effectively Essentials is the core email filtering and security boiled down to that core essential performance, where the things like the Veriatek people and the analytics and the insight and the follow on is something that is left out to make it more of a certainly affordable, I would say, but at the same time it's probably for very small businesses, and we have plenty of small customers where the idea of spending a certain amount of money on any product, they just don't have the budget for it, but they still need email filtering, so there's that. But the security awareness training can be added on to the Essentials product, right?
It can, yes. And just
That's
keep
great.
in mind with the Essentials product, we're using that same threat research or threat, the engines on the back end.
It's all the same database.
It's all the same data that we're applying. The difference is that it's tuned toward more of a SMB market, and so we have that, and it's a great product, and it gives you have an interface that you work in versus different solutions across, but you're getting a lot of coverage, and it's a great thing also for partners to offer for tenants. So we have that availability as well.
Yep. And we've been spun up on that iVoxy. We've got some customers already leveraging that, so we very much enjoy it. It's something that, again, if I would say it's not a product we'd recommend, but if the company is sizable at all with a number of users, there's just so much to benefit from the when you say the enterprise, or the proof point on demand, the full blown. It used to be, I would say, something where you would purchase an appliance to bring on site, and you still can, from my understanding.
That's correct.
But I feel like especially if your email is already hosted on a cloud platform, it behooves you to just have this be a SaaS type product setup anyway.
That's correct.
Which
We
works
do have
great,
both
yeah.
flavors, but the more popular one is our Proofpoint on Demand.
Right. And so I have one more kind of question,
Sure.
kind of a, not a gotcha, but put you on the spot a little bit.
Okay.
And so a lot of times the nice thing about, Kaz and I, all of our colleagues, we came from operations. We didn't come from sales. And that's not to knock anybody in sales. It's just ultimately we all had to do these things that we're talking to our customers about today.
Right.
We all have had to do it. We all still do it in our hobby life, on the side, whatever. So I feel like we're in a unique position to know what the questions are because they're valid questions. This is what I would be asking if somebody was talking to me about Proofpoint or whatever.
Right.
So, okay, I'm Matt, the admin who just set up M365. Isn't the Exchange Online, the default stuff that comes with it, isn't it good enough? I guess I know the answer to that question, but I think a lot of people would come with that argument and not know exactly the difference between, email filtering, email filtering, right?
Since we're partnering with Microsoft, we see a lot of those customers, so we can work hand in hand to provide the best security experience while still allowing the customers that Microsoft has to continue with that solution.
Sure. No, that's great. And you also have that rapid risk report that's totally free, takes 5 minutes to set up?
Exactly. Hey, that's a great point you're making. Yeah, this is something that we're seeing a lot of headway with our partners, with their customers, direct customers. We're looking at ways that we can go in and show the value and the power of Proofpoint and what we can capture. And we have what's called a rapid risk assessment that comes with reporting. And so in the market, we hear rapid risk assessment, rapid risk reporting. The reporting comes after the solution is set up, of course. And the way that this works is just like you said, it's very fast. It's for O365 environments that want to take a look and see what Proofpoint would capture beyond what their incumbent is doing. So we're not in the mail flow where we would actually stop anything, but within about 5 minutes, we can have an O365 admin go in and set up a read-only type of scenario where we can get this information and take a 2-week look back and see what is in an environment that the incumbent didn't capture, as well as going forward, take a look at that information. I've been involved with quite a few of these, and we're seeing things right out of the gate like corporate credential phishing, where it's targeted, it's more sophisticated. We're seeing things like highly targeted people within an organization getting this, or accounts like accounts payable received a highly targeted type of threat where someone's trying to get information and change a banking routing to something that looked like, it was from the inside of their organization. So this is a great way for organizations to take a look and see, hey, what's going on in my environment and what is possible with Proofpoint.
I do like that because what you've got in your mailbox is what you've got in your mailbox, right? So that's already happened. You take that analysis and you say, we have 30,000 additional emails we would have triggered.
That's correct.
Well, gosh, what were those 30,000? Where did they go? And who clicked on something in one of those emails? That's terrifying.
Yeah, it really is. And so it's a great way to take a look at it without worrying about interrupting the mail flow by putting in Proofpoint. We're not doing that at that time. We're just reporting back. So historically for 2 weeks and going forward. And then we provide a variety of reports on what types of targets, what were the highest ones, who were the most attacked or who were threatened the most, what kind of threat scores did we see based on, is it a lower spread? Is it like a spammer that's hitting a lot of people, but it's not very targeted, all the way up to highly targeted based on a user or an actor within an organization. So it's great to take a look at that and just have knowledge of what's possible.
That's fantastic. Okay, everybody, before we wrap up this episode, here's the scoop on how to enter the drawing to win the Yeti Cooler. Simply send an email from your work account with your contact information to podcast@ivoxy.com with the subject line Yeti Cooler. It's as simple as that. If you've won, we'll get back to you. Secure your email and secure the coldness of your drinks with a Yeti Cooler, courtesy of our friends at Proofpoint. Remember, email to podcast@ivoxy.com, include your contact deets, Subject line, Yeti cooler to enter.
Nice.
Yeah, Darla, I think, we've taken up a lot of your time. I really appreciate it. This is fantastic. I just think it fleshes out exactly what the difference is between what your father's Oldsmobile was like with email filtering 10, 15, 20 years ago versus, how it's become, how long has email been around? How long has it been broken? The protocols are what they are. Identity proof theft spoofing is just the social engineering aspect is just the constant weak link. And I feel like Proofpoint's got a great handle on being able to go to that next level to an offer, another level of analysis, not to just be this algorithmic heuristic filter, and more about actual targeted people, the analysis and the education about that. So thanks for coming on and explaining a bit for us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you so much for hosting me. It's been great talking with you today.
It's been
our
wonderful.
pleasure. Yeah. Maddie, I think that about wraps another episode. What do you think?
I think so. We had a lot there.
Outstanding. Well, thanks again to Darla. And if anybody's got any questions, reach out to us at podcast@ivoxy.com. Any topics you want to hear about, we're happy to chat. For Matt, I'm Matt. Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great day.